Cheech here with Fly Fish Food, and here we have Skill Builder 27. I have it in front of me. We're going to talk about bobbins. What makes a good bobbin? What should you look for? We're going to talk about using turkey flats for parachute wings or split wings like a royal wolf, and how to palmer marabou.
Yeah, that's a big brown.
Let's talk about bobbins. Here we have a whole bunch of bobbins in front of us. And this isn't going to be a rundown of each model and all the features and benefits. These are just some of the things that I'm looking for when I'm buying a bobbin. So, bobbin has one purpose. Well, I guess two purposes in this world. Number one, to hold your thread and distribute it smoothly and evenly. Number two, to not break said thread while it is doing the above task. All right? I think I read that in a manual somewhere. No, really, you need a bobbin that's not going to break your thread. The majority of times when people come in and they say, hey, I need a thread that won't break, it's super strong, I keep breaking everything. Well, guess what? It's probably your bobbin. More times than I can count, it was the bobbin. So, let's start out with this one. This is the Mattarelli. This is an original Frank Mattarelli bobbin. My buddy Swenny gave it to me. And you can see that there's no ceramic insert on this. Okay, it's just pure metal. And I did a lot of research on bobbins a few years back, and I found out that these old school bobbins could get away with being metal because back then they would take the time to polish the metal. It doesn't happen very much anymore. There are a few that do have metal tips that are good, but for the most part you're going to look for some sort of buffer between the metal and where the thread comes out. For example, this is one of the new Stonefo bobbins. This is a really heavy duty one, but you can see it's got a ceramic or some sort of smooth tip on this one. Okay, that prevents your thread from breaking. Okay, so smooth tips. One of my very favorites, a good old Tiemco ceramic. It's really basic. It's just brass fittings here, and the whole tube is really smooth, polished ceramic. I've never had an issue with these. I guess you could have an issue if it broke or chipped and when you drop it on the ground or whatever. But full ceramic tube, really, really simple. Not going to break the bank if you buy a whole bunch of them. The one that you see me use a lot is this guy. This is the Smayan Standard Bobbin. They also make one with a little clutch that goes in the middle of it. And I actually don't like that on my bobbins. I just like to let it rest in my hand. And I use my hand as a clutch. But I like this one because it does have a full ceramic tube, but it also has a little bit of weight to it. And that's important. Not too heavy, but a little bit of weight so that you can spin it, and it spins well. It'll spin faster if there's a little bit of weight. So, speaking of that, I talked about the clutch. We're going to talk about the good old right bobbin. These are awesome. Of the clutch bobbins, I think they're the best. My only thing is I don't like the right as much because I spin my thread a lot, and because it only has one arm, it can get wobbly. Okay? You can put your finger right by the tip of this and it will spin pretty well. But for the most part, you know, anytime you have a clutch, it's going to be more of a pain in the butt to get your thread out of it, even though the right system makes it pretty simple. But we have a couple of the right bobbins. Let's see, ergonomic wise, this is a cool one that I got from old Marcos at Hairline, and it has a little pad built in. I think this is the tungsten bobbin that they make, and it's really, really comfortable to tie with. And I guess we'll cover that as well. Ergonomics of a bobbin. This, you should hold a bobbin. Let's do it with this one. Just rest it on this pad of your finger, and your thumb pinches it right here. Okay? That way you can keep your wraps nice and parallel to the hook. You have good control. You can use your hand as a brake. I have giant hands. This one's not too small if I hold it like this. I see a lot of tyers tie like this, but this is the best way to get your thread control under tabs. Okay, so this bobbin I love because it's built in. This is like a little pad almost for your fingers. It's weird, but it feels really comfy to tie with. Long tube for streamers. This one is so long though, you have to buy a special threader for it, but This and this one, the loon ones, also don't have any ceramic at all. But I know that they've gone to the process of polishing these up. I actually use the loon bobbins all the time and haven't had any issues. So let's see what's next. Let's talk about this one right here. This is a cool one from Stomfo, and I'm actually tying some pike musky flies right now. So I have this one strung up, and it's really comfortable to tie the big stuff with. It's put together well, so when I crank down on stuff, it's not going to slip. And it is a clutch mechanism. This is maybe the best clutch that I've seen. There are little rubber O-rings inside of here that kind of keep the bolts snug, I guess, and then it connects in the middle here. So anyway, really easy to adjust this one. Another thing to consider with a bobbin is the ease of changing spools. So if you have a clutch system like these, you're going to have to unscrew it, take the pin all the way out, put a new spool in, and put it all back together. This one, you just pop it out, and if you need it tighter, you just squeeze these together. Sometimes you have to cross them over and really squeeze them together, and if you want it looser, you pull them apart. A bobbin like this that has little flat metal tabs, you don't want to really get too much on the pulling it apart, but anyway, just kind of wiggle it till it gets to your liking. It shouldn't be so tight that you break your thread when you pull it down. It shouldn't be so loose that it falls to the table. Somewhere in between is what's comfortable. So, at the end of the day, if it were my perfect world, I would keep my bobbins pretty simple, okay? Oh, and then also there's one, see this, how it's bent like this? I pulled this one off of Curtis's desk. So some people like the way that feels in their hand, you know, more ergonomic, who knows? I don't use these a lot because they're harder to spin. But anyway, all different types of bobbins out there. Fact of the matter is you just find something that works for you. Sometimes you'll like a short one, a long one. These are all pretty standard bobbins across the board. Some are easier to find than others. But at the end of the day, make sure that your bobbin holds your thread and make sure that it doesn't break it. We're going to talk about parachute posts and wings. A lot of people like to use natural materials, and there's one I think is fairly overlooked, and that is turkey flats. This is a white turkey flat. You can see it's seen better days. Like, it's pretty hammered. But we're going to turn this into a really cool parachute, and you can even do Royal Wolf wings out of this. So I'm going to prep it. I'm just going to pull those broken ones down. I'm going to come in here on the other side. And this stuff you can use for, you know, little tiny marabou flies, however you want. All right, so here we have this feather, and essentially we're just going to preen all that forward, and we're going to use this to make our wing. However, that might be a little bit too much, so I'm going to show you how you can size this out. So first things first, I'm going to get rid of that tip right there because, you know, that's about the length of a parachute from here to here that we'll use. And then if you don't want to use the whole feather, just come in here and I'm going to trim that out just like that. Okay. Now I'll preen everything forward. Takes a second to get this all lined up. But as you can see, I kind of have just kind of a natural-ish looking wing. I'm going to put that forward and I'm going to tie this down just like that. All right. And then just cut it off at an angle. We can just wrap down this. You can see this will make a really cool, nice tapered body down. Okay. And, you know, I'm going to pull this up now. And I'll wrap in front of that. And then this is where you kind of have to use very little pressure because this isn't going to be as rigid as like Antron or something. But I'm going to wrap up the parachute post, back down. There we have a really cool, clean, natural looking parachute post out of turkey flat. And you can see that wasn't perfect. I mean, the fibers aren't even aligned perfectly, but that's going to be awesome on a parachute. I'm going to show you another wing technique that's a little fuller. My father-in-law is a big fan of the Royal Coachman. Royal Coachmans are terrible to tie, so I just tie them Royal Wolves, and those are even terrible to tie. But this method makes it somewhat easier. So I'm going to get quite a big clump here. I'm going to pull that down, and I'm going to tie this down, wrap it back. So once I have that tied in, I'm going to do that same technique. Just barely open my scissors, place the stuff where I want it. We'll tie this down. So here I have the wing. I have a dam of thread put in the front, and I am going to now split that in two. This is where you've got to be real careful not to explode this thing, because you're going to be putting, you know, thread wraps around the base of a pretty slim thing. It doesn't take very many, and I just did a cheater wrap around the hook shank. Alright, then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I want to see everybody try this technique. This will make you swear. I think it will make you swear that you're not going to tie flies like this anymore, I guess. So you can see it keeps slipping a little bit. All right, so I have very small wraps of thread, and now I can just figure eight in between those, pushing those wings together, sort those out, and that's a lot less wind resistant and really small tie down, and it's a super cool technique you can use with turkey flats. All right, we're going to show you how to palmer marabou. It doesn't have to be as hard as it looks. I mean, it looks crazy, and some people like lick their fingers and get it perfect, but I'm going to show you the way I like to do it. So first thing I've done is I farmed out a piece of marabou with a relatively thin stem. You know, it's got a lot of movement to it, and there's not a lot of junk on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the feather by the tip, okay, about that much. And I'm going to tie that in just like this. And this is very, very brittle. Okay, so there's a way you can make this durable. I'm just going to do it with 2 feathers because it's the same with 2 versus 1. And this part is really, really messy. This is one of those flies that, you know, it's not going to look good till the very end. Okay, this is how I do the collar on the cheech leech. There are all kinds of other flies that I do a palmered marabou. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these 2 feathers now, and I'm going to try to untwist it so that they lay flat. This takes a very light hand. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just start wrapping these forward, and I can sit here and pick all these fibers out perfectly if I want, but it's really not going to matter. So I'm just going to start making some turns, and as you get further down the stem of marabou, you can pull on it a little bit harder. So here I'm going, and see all the fibers are trapping down, and it looks really, really bad. So I'm going to now take my thread and wiggle it a little bit to kind of keep as many fibers not trapped down as possible. Wiggle it down on the other side. I just have 1 turn here, and that should be enough. Okay, so I'm going to pull these all back now, and I'm going to take my thread and wrap down over the top of this marabou. You don't have to do this so close to the eye of the hook, but once I have that wrapped down, I can come in here and find the little stems and just trim nothing but the stem, and then you can pull that marabou out or it will break off. That eliminates any rough ends. We'll get that out of there. You know, this head, don't look at the head. We're not finishing this up. So now I can take a comb and brush it out like this. That way, and also this way. Uh-oh, you break your thread off with the comb. All right, if you did that well enough, it should not unravel at all. let's see. Watch it all unravel now, Brig. All right, so you can see about right now how that collar turns out. Okay, so if you're going to finish it off at the head, just kind of take a little bit more care not to crowd too far close. If you're doing it behind other materials, that's how to do it. But the second I touch it with the comb, it frees every single fiber that was trapped, and I can just brush it this way, and that is an awesome way to make a marabou collar.